evening. I'm Maham Tawa with the news making headlines around the world. His Highness the Emir continues to receive congratulations on the UN naming him a humanitarian leader and Kuwait a humanitarian center. The U.S. House of Representatives approves President Barack Obama's plan to train and arm the moderate Syrian opposition. Millions of people in Scotland are voting on whether the country should stay in the UK or become independent. And India and China signed 12 agreements leading to huge Chinese investment in India's infrastructure over 5 years. In our first item, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah received a cable of congratulations from His Excellency President of the Republic of Tajikistan, Imam Ali Rahman, in which he congratulated His Highness for naming Kuwait a humanitarian center and himself a humanitarian leader by the United Nations. The cable said this honoring was in recognition and appreciation of His Highness the Emir's contributions and support to humanitarian action, which boosted Kuwait's position at the international level. The Tajik President also wished His Highness the best of health and continual progress for the state of Kuwait under his prudent leadership. His Highness the Emir sent a reply cable expressing gratitude and appreciation to His Excellency the President of Tajikistan for his kind feelings and best wishes, as well as for his congratulation on being named by the United Nations the humanitarian leader and Kuwait the humanitarian center. His Highness the Emir also thanked President Rahman for his praise of the state of Kuwait and its outstanding support to the relief work across the world, adding that this gesture reflected the existing good relations between the two countries and their friendly people. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah received a cable of congratulations from His Excellency Prime Minister of the Republic of Serbia, Alexander Vučić, in which he congratulated His Highness for naming Kuwait a humanitarian center and himself a humanitarian leader by the United Nations. The cable said this honoring was in recognition and appreciation of His Highness the Emir's contributions and support to humanitarian action, which boosted Kuwait's position at the international level. The Serbian President also wished His Highness the best of health and continual progress for the state of Kuwait under his prudent leadership. His Highness the Emir sent a reply cable expressing gratitude and appreciation to His Excellency the President of Serbia for his kind feelings and best wishes, as well as for his congratulation on being named by the United Nations the humanitarian leader and Kuwait Humanitarian Center. His Highness the Emir also thanked President Vučić for his praise of the state of Kuwait and its outstanding support to the relief work across the world, adding that this gesture reflected the existing good relations between the two countries and their friendly people. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to Her Excellency the President of the Republic of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, on the occasion of her country's National Day. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah also sent a cable of congratulations to Her Excellency the President of the Republic of Chile, Michelle Bachelet, on the occasion of her country's National Day. And His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable. The U.S. House of Representatives approved President Barack Obama's plan to train and arm the moderate Syrian opposition taking on Islamic State or the IS. The vote passed by a large majority in the House and is expected to be adopted in the Senate. While Iraq Prime Minister strongly rejected the idea of the U.S. or other nations sending ground forces to his country to help fight the IS group, Obama reassured that there will be no U.S. troops on the ground in Iraq. Nadia Ali has more in this report.
U.S. President Barack Obama said a House vote granting authority for the U.S. military to train and arm moderate Syrian rebels was an important step towards confronting the IS-IL extremist group. He made the comments during a picnic at the White House, saying that when it came to America's national security, America is united. Earlier, the Republican-controlled House voted unanimously to authorize the program. A Senate vote is expected as early as today. President Obama said the House vote showed that there was bipartisan support for a critical component of his strategy to confront the extremists who have seized territory in Iraq and Syria.
I want to start off by saying thank you to House members, Republican and Democrat, who came together today to pass an important component on our strategy for dealing with this terrible terrorist organization known as ISIL. And I want to in particular thank Speaker Boehner and Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi for showing us that when it comes to America's national security, America's united.
The president said the training would not be conducted in Syria and U.S. military personnel would not be on the ground in Syria as part of the program. Meanwhile, Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said today that counter-terrorism raids in Sydney were prompted by security intelligence that the ISIL movement was planning a random, violent attack in Australia as a demonstration of its reach. His statement came as Australian police detained 15 people and raided more than a dozen properties across Sydney in the country's largest counter-terrorism operation. Abbott said that he had been briefed last night about the operation that was prompted by information that an ISIL movement leader was calling on Australian supporters to kill. Abbott was asked about reports that the people detained were planning to publicly behead a random person in Sydney.
Well, that's the intelligence that we received, the exhortations, quite direct exhortations, were coming from an Australian who is apparently quite senior in ISIL to networks of support back in Australia to conduct demonstration killings here in this country.
Prime Minister Abbott did not name the Australian. Federal Police Deputy Commissioner Andrew Colvin said about 800 federal and state police officers were involved in the Sydney operation, the largest in Australian history. Police also conducted raids in the eastern cities of Brisbane and Logan. The arrests come just days after the country raised its terror warning to the second highest level in response to the domestic threat posed by supporters of the ISIL group.
IS fighters captured villages and besieged the Kurdish city in northern Syria today in a major assault that prompted the commander to appeal for military aid from other Kurds in the region. In an advance near the border with Turkey, IS fighters using heavy weaponry, including tanks, seized a group of Kurdish villages near the city of Ain al-Arab. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said 21 villages had fallen to IS fighters advancing on the city. As the observatory said, there were fears of massacres in the area seized by IS. Reports emerged that Kurdish fighters are clashing with IS militants in the area. Medics carrying out a vaccination program in rebel-held northern Syria accidentally administered a muscle relaxant to up to 75 children, killing 15 of them. A preliminary investigation by the National Coalition found a tracheotomy was given to the children instead of a solution used to mix measles vaccines. All of the children who died on Tuesday were between 6 and 18 months old. The National Coalition said it suspected a security breach by vandals linked to the government of President Bashar al-Assad. Israel announced its initial approval to confiscate nearly 700 dunams of lands from Al-Sawiya and Al-Tur in Jerusalem to build a national park, threatening to demolish 50 Palestinian houses. More with Fatma Abdelkarim from Ramallah.
The Israeli government's Planning Council announced its initial approval of the confiscation of nearly 700 dunams of Palestinian lands of Al-Isawiyyah and Al-Tur towns in East Jerusalem to transfer their residential areas into a public national park. The park's master plan threatens the demolition of dozens of houses of Palestinian families who would be left homeless without any alternatives, paving the way for more settlements.
It is the Israeli policy to control the lands and ban Palestinians from building. So, we see this renewed plan to confiscate those lands for a national park by utilizing religion for strategic political ends, which aims to evacuate Palestinians from Jerusalem and building more settlements.
The process to this master plan has followed through legal objections and appeals by the people of Jerusalem that reached the Israeli High Court, which failed in the face of strong political decision by the Israeli government. This Israeli government's master plan is seen as one of the major threats to the lives of Palestinians in Jerusalem and the Judaization of the city, especially as the decision came under pretexts such as preserving the natural landscape and for religious, historical and cultural significance, which Palestinians find baseless and discriminatory.
Actually, this is a new step in the procedure of Judaizing Jerusalem, and it is another step in the ethnic cleansing against us as Palestinians. Within the decision of the committee, they have mentioned that they are looking to preserve this area, the national park, the assumed national park, as a heritage. This is a confiscation of land and limiting us from having a place to live and to build.
The new plan will limit the natural growth needs of both Al-Isawiyeh and Al-Tur, which are hometowns of thousands of Palestinian families, and serves the illegal Israeli scheme to control East Jerusalem and the unlawful expansionist plan to isolate Jerusalem from the West Bank by connecting it to the ring of settlements around it. By furthering its Judaization of Jerusalem, Israel is pursuing a parallel track to the settlement activity, which aims to isolate the holy city and cut off the West Bank. Even in the height of the diplomatic activity to end the Israeli occupation, Israel is leaving no chances for the two-state solution or the establishment of a Palestinian state. Fatma Abdul Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
People in Scotland are voting on whether the country should stay in the United Kingdom or become an independent nation. With over 4 million people registered to vote, it is expected to be the busiest day in Scottish electoral history. Votes will be cast at 5,579 polling stations until 2200 hours today, with the result expected tomorrow morning. Polls suggest the result is too close to call, with the pro-independence yes side gaining momentum in the final weeks of campaigning. The referendum is a straight yes-no question on whether Scotland should stay on the Union or secede. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko is to begin today a key visit to the U.S. to seek further support to end the crisis in East Ukraine. Poroshenko is flying to the U.S. from Canada, where he told MPs Ukraine is paying a very high price for their right in determining their future. More than 3,000 people have died in fighting between Ukrainian government forces and pro-Russian rebels in the eastern Donetsk and Luhansk regions since April. A ceasefire agreed on September the 5th is so far holding, despite accusations of shelling by both sides. India and China today signed 12 agreements in Delhi, one of which will see China investing $20 billion in India's infrastructure over 5 years. At a news conference with Chinese President Xi Jinping, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi said peace on the border was important for this progress. Talks came as India accused China of fresh territorial incursions in Ladakh. President Xi said he was committed to working with India to maintain peace on the border. Both sides also focused on increasing cooperation in trade, space exploration and civil and nuclear energy. Recording one of the highest energy consumption rates per capita in the world, the state of Kuwait is keen on pursuing a sustainability plan that includes generating 15% of electricity from renewable resources by 2030. At the rate Kuwait is consuming energy, with the average Kuwaiti using 22 times more resources than the country provides per person, experts believe it will need as much as 20% of its oil production capacity just for energy generation by 2017, a consumption pattern deemed unsustainable given that 66% of the country's gross domestic product, the GDP, is dependent on the oil industry. Sarah Farris Globe has more in this report on the recent efforts by the Ministry of Electricity and Water.
The Minister of Electricity and Water and Minister of Public Works, Abdulaziz Al Ibrahim, recently signed a contract for supplying and installing power transmission substations.
As you know, Kuwait trying to have the latest technique in these substations, and also all our system is based on a ring system, which is to recover, which is a highly costly system, but it also give a security for the customers. And Kuwait is by higher authorities insisting also always to have the best service for their customer and consumers. So all our substation has been fed by ring system. This is one of them, and the other feeder will be finished within 6 months to feed the substation. And as when we make the internal interview, internal visit to substation, you see how this substation is consisted from double bus bar, from everything, to maintain the security, so the supply will be continuous, and cannot be interrupted. That's what we are interested to. There is a lot of phases. There is a lot of things coming on. We are continuing. This is within the plan. As you know, this has been signed in 2011. It's just new. It's just we have a continuation for all this population, all this new construction we have here. We have Subah Al Ahmed too. We have also Jabal Al Ahmed too. We are continuing it. It's not just in the Ministry of Electricity, also in the Ministry of Public Works. There is a lot of projects will be tendered, regarding the highways within the 6 months maybe, and we will tender not less than 7 to 8 projects. It might, so high cost in these, but this is part of the development plan which we are following.
Under Kuwait's ambitious National Development Plan, the Ministry of Electricity and Water is one of the institutions with the most projects, exceeding hundreds of millions of Kuwaiti dinars, making it a very attractive target for investment.
Our company is very much a part of this development plan. We have taken this substation as well as some other projects like similar works and warhead lines, cable works, everything is they're all part of the development plan of this country. We have a few plans of the new city Sabah Al Ahmed 2Z, Sabah Al Ahmed area city. So soon it will be inaugurated, that substation.
Especially the Kuwait, this is huge, the need for the electricity, because you have a lot of the refinery and the oil, it's the upstream and downstreams. So you need more electricity after more than 20 years or 30 years. So because as of Hyoseong, we have more experience in this GCC and Middle East area. More than 20 years, our product is operated and already proven the qualities in the world. So we want to dedicate our deep technologies, dedication in this area, especially Kuwait.
The Ministry of Electricity and Water estimated the total value of the contract at 28.51 million Kuwaiti dinars and noted the deal was meant to enhance the performance of the country's power distribution network. As the country's National Development Plan is about to enter the second stage of its mid-range phase, the results are becoming more visible as several projects are either being completed or are near completion, and companies around the world are eyeing investment in Kuwait due to the immense opportunities. This is Sarah Globe reporting for English News.
local business news, the main indices of Kuwait Stock Exchange ended this trading today in the green zone, with the KSX 15 index gaining 0.43 points to reach 1,211.58 points. The price index also earned the 11.61 points to close at 7,598.36. And the weight index rose by 0.01 points to end this week's trading at 495.67 points. The number of trades amounted to 6,843 transactions, worth about 31.8 million Kuwaiti dinars, with around 313.6 million shares changing hands. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Well, with that, we conclude our news bulletin. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant time. I'm Maham Tawa. Before we go, we remind you once again of our main top stories. Have a pleasant time and good night. His Highness the Emir continues to receive congratulations on the new UN naming him a humanitarian leader and Kuwait a humanitarian center. The U.S. House of Representatives approves President Barack Obama's plan to train and arm the moderate Syrian opposition. Millions of people in Scotland are voting on whether the country should stay in the UK or become independent. And India and China signed 12 agreements leading to huge Chinese investment in India's infrastructure over 5 years.